All right, Terry and Elizabeth, we're all set.
Wonderful. Well, like Molly said, thank you so much to everybody who is joining us today. We'll just take a quick moment to let people pop on. It looks like we have quite a few participants, but we'll just give them just a few more seconds to pop on. So today you are attending Lunch and Learn, exploring switches, keyboards, and other access tools. So that is the workshop that we are presenting on today. All right, so my name is Terry Rosen. I'm an assistive technology specialist and the director of the Simon Technology Center at the Pacer Center. I've worked at Pacer for about 7 years, and prior to that, I was an educator for about a decade. So I will let Elizabeth go on and introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Berry, and I'm also an assistive technology specialist in the Simon Technology Center at Pacer. I've worked at Pacer for about 6.5 years, and my background is in early childhood special education. Thanks so much for joining us today.
And then the other member of our trio today is Molly Mayer. Molly's going to be doing our workshop support today. So she's going to be helping you out today if you have questions in the chat. She's also going to be bringing questions that she can answer to our attention in the actual workshop. So Molly, just say a quick hello again.
Sorry, hello everyone.
Sorry about that, Molly, I put you on the spot there. All right, so just for your reference today, there are parts of this workshop where we are going to have the PowerPoint up for you to view. And there are also parts of this presentation today where you will not see the PowerPoint on the screen because we'll be doing demos on our cameras. So if you are somebody who likes to follow along with every single slide as we go through, because all the things that we're going to demo today are referenced in the PowerPoint presentation, you can certainly click to link to that. Molly is also going to put that link in the chat for you today. It was also in the reminder email that you received for the workshop. So the email that you went to click on to join today also has links to this workshop. Also, if you are somebody who has a mobile device handy, you can also use the QR code. So all you have to do is take out your phone, hold it up, and then open the camera app, put it over that screen, and it should pop up a little link, and all you'll have to do is tap to see that. So you'll be able to link to see our presentation slides there. We also created a supplemental handout today that has all of the information about all of the tools that we're going to cover today, including the device itself, a link to where you can find it, price information. So that is what the supplemental handout is about. So like I said, you can access that either that link that's on the screen. Molly will put that in the chat as well, or using a QR code. So a few tips for viewing this webinar today. So you are able to join us today either via Zoom webinar, which is where we are right now, or we are also broadcasting this live to our YouTube channel. Sometimes folks watch us there, sometimes they watch us through Zoom. Either way works for us. You can do it either way. You can participate in the chat in both Zoom webinar and YouTube. Molly's going to be monitoring the chat in both of those places. And if she hasn't already, Molly's also going to share the links to the handouts in the YouTube chat. So if you're joining us there, you will also have access to those there. One other thing to know is that the workshop evaluation will be at the end of the workshop. That will be shared in the chat in both places. So as we're going along in the workshop, we would love for us to have a fun, active chat. So things you can post in the chat about if you're having technical difficulties with YouTube or Zoom, you can post them in there. And Molly will do her best to kind of help you problem solve anything that comes up. If you have questions for us about the content, you can certainly post them there. Comments for everyone. One tip for posting things in the chat. When you post in the Zoom chat, you can choose to post to panelists, or you can choose to post to panelists and all attendees. A lot of times if you're posting a question, it's really helpful to post it to attendees and panelists. So that way everybody can see what the question is. So as we answer it, you have some reference from where that question came from. And also, we found that our audiences tend to be really knowledgeable, and they share tons of really great information in the chat as well. So when you share it to attendees and the panelists, then we see it, and everybody else who's joining us today sees all of your great ideas and information as well. So our certificate of attendance. So anybody who attends the workshop today is eligible to receive a certificate of attendance. It is for those who are attending the workshop live, and that's whether you're watching it either here in Zoom or over YouTube. At the very end of the workshop, there will be a link to fill out a SurveyMonkey evaluation. It gives us feedback about the workshop. And once you finished that entire SurveyMonkey evaluation, you'll click to submit it. And then in a thank you message that pops up, you'll see a link to the certificate of attendance. You'll have to click on that link and either save or print that certificate of attendance right away. If you are watching this months down the road, unfortunately, we can't provide certificates of attendance months down the road because we can't verify your attendance at that point. However, if you are somebody who is watching this a couple hours later, that certificate will still be available because you will be able to, or the survey will still be open. We do close the survey very shortly after the workshop, though. We just want to make sure we're accommodating for folks in different time zones who might not be able to watch it at the exact moment it's on. But that there is a very limited amount of time that will be open for the certificate. So just a quick bit of feedback for you today. So we are from the Pacer Center, which is located in Bloomington, Minnesota. We are an organization that has been around since about the 70s, and we actually have about 30 different projects. We started kind of as an organization based on parents helping parents and parent advocacy, helping parents kind of navigate the special ed process and helping them as they go along with making sure that they're getting what they need for their students. Over the years, Pacer has branched out into many different project areas, including things like where Elizabeth and Molly and I work, the Simon Technology Center, where we focus on assistive technology. We have the National Bullying Prevention Center, National Center on Transition and Employment, tons of information. Our website has a lot of information. You can dig on there for days, probably. Actually, I think you could maybe even like a year. There's so much information that you could dig on our website. But we address lots of different areas that affect families of students with disabilities and the professionals that work with them as well. So if you are curious, please feel free to dig into our website a little bit, just pacer.org. So where we work in the Simon Technology Center, really our goal is to make the benefits of technology more accessible to children and adults with disabilities. There are lots of parts of Pacer that focus more on the school-aged child, but we actually work with all ages in the STC, all the way from the little itty bitties through folks in later adulthood. So sometimes people think Pacer only works with school-age kiddos. Not all parts of it are only focused on those ages. We work with all ages. We do this through a few different things. Information and referral. If people have questions, they can call us, they can email us for more information on things. If we don't know the answer to things, we will refer you to places that can answer them for you. We have an assistive technology lending library where you can borrow items to trial to make sure that things are a good fit for you or your student. We do free assistive technology consultations, which are a great starting point. Sometimes it can be really overwhelming to know where to start when you're on your assistive technology journey, and that's something that we can help with. We have specialists that focus on all different areas and age groups, and really we help you to kind of narrow it down and see what's out there, so then you can make more informed decisions on what might be a good fit or for what you might want to advocate for yourself or for your student in a school or employment situation. We also do individualized trainings. So if somebody has a specific kind of technology that they need to get trained on, that is something that we can help with as well. All right, so the workshop, what are we going to talk about today? First thing, just the 5 W's of access. And then we're going to get into kind of the meat of the presentation, exploring different types of switches, mounts, interfaces, adaptive mice, different types of keyboards as well. And then that should be most of what our presentation is today, are those demonstrations. Please don't hesitate to ask questions as we go along. We would certainly love to help you answer those questions as they go. So we have questions and evaluations at the end, but please don't feel like you have to wait until the end to ask those questions. Before we dive in, I'm just going to launch a really quick poll that is just going to help us understand a little bit more about who's watching this workshop today. So what is your primary role in viewing this webinar today? And if you're watching this on YouTube, unfortunately, the poll doesn't carry through over to YouTube. So go ahead and post in the chat. Are you a parent or family member? Are you a professional, student or consumer? Or do you fall under another category? That's the first question. And then the second question today is, where are you viewing from? So we get a lot of viewers from Minnesota because we are located in Minnesota, but we're always curious to know where other people are watching us today too. And looking at kind of how this poll is breaking out, we have a ton of viewers that are not from Minnesota. That's super cool. We get really excited about that. It looks like we even have a few folks that are from outside of North America. So wherever you are watching us from, we're glad that you're joining us today. And thank you so much for participating in that poll. It's helpful for us to know as we're presenting who our audience is. So we're at about 58% professional, 6% parents, and then 34% student consumer. So awesome, thanks so much. I'll share those results with you quickly and we'll keep going. All right, so the 5 W's of access. So when I was preparing for this workshop today, we're all familiar with the term access. It's a term we use a ton. We talk about, well, that's not very accessible. Sometimes we say that when we just can't reach something. Sometimes we say that when we can't find something, either in a physical location or on a website. It's a term that's used all the time today and carries a lot of different meanings. And so I was like, I'm going to look for just a really concrete definition of access to share with everybody. And what I found is that there isn't a super concrete definition of access. You can find a lot of information on Microsoft Access, a database, but there wasn't just a really good working definition of accessibility. So I decided I was just going to go in to the who, what, where, when, and why of access, just to give people a better idea of what we're talking about today. So the who, it's really for anyone who experiences some type of barrier in their ability to use something as it's designed. So when you think about it broadly in that context, that really could be a lot of different people. It could be people who have a diagnosed disability, people who don't have a diagnosed disability. So it really reaches pretty far when you think about it that way. The what of access. What is an access tool? It's something that provides the user a type of bridge to engage with that tool or device. So if it's not something that they can use as designed, either because of their physical needs or other needs, access tools provide a bridge so that they can use their tools as in a meaningful way. Where do we need access tools? Any environment where people need the ability to engage. And again, that makes it pretty broad. That pretty much encompasses all environments. That's a home environment, that's a work environment, that's out in the community, that's in education settings. When? All the time. People need to have access to the different things that they are engaging in life. So really, we want to make sure that people have access all the time when they need it. And why? Because everybody has the right to meaningful engagement and inclusion. And access used to always be thought of as an afterthought. Sometimes it still is today. Actually, pretty often it still is today. But there are a lot of manufacturers out there and employers and environments that are starting to be more proactive about considering access for people that either work or go to school in their environments. So the next section that we're going to talk about today are kind of our first section of demonstrations. Will have to do with switches, and Elizabeth is going to talk about switches for you today.
All right, share my screen here for you. All right, so one tool that we can use to engage with other tools or devices that we might have trouble accessing, as Terry was talking about, are switches. And switches are the interface between you as the individual and the object that you want to interact with. And so they help people who might have difficulty accessing things with their hands or their fingers to be able to independently activate or access whatever they would like to access. So when we think about switches, some of the common uses of switches are to access switch accessible toys for play is one example. So the picture on the screen is of a duck switch adapted toy, and it's a little hard to see, but he has a switch port coming out of his back. And then this red switch here is plugged into his switch port so that when it is activated, the toy, I believe he jumps and sings and things like that. So we're going to look at some examples of switches in just a moment. Another tool that switches can provide access to are communication devices. So in this picture here on the bottom, this student is reaching out to activate his red switch here on his tray. And the picture is a little dark, but that switch is connected to his communication device here. And the switch allows him to select things on the screen that he wouldn't be able to do by touching the screen. So it allows him to access his voice and be able to communicate. We can also use switches to control computers and tablets and phones, as well as electrical appliances, things like lights, mixers in the kitchen, blenders, things like that. And we can also use them to activate and drive wheelchairs and things like that. All right, so then when we think about switches, there are many, many switches available, and we're going to look at some today, but there's no way we could look at all of them. So just know that switches can vary in lots of different ways, including size. So you can have switches that are very, very small, or you can have switches that are bigger, that have a bigger activation target. They can vary in color. So some individuals might be able to see different colors better than others. So that might be something to consider. They vary in shape and as well as texture. So in this picture on the screen, this student is reaching out to touch the switch here in the middle, and you can't really see the top of it, but what the top is kind of a soft plastic, and inside the plastic is gel. So it's a very soft activation for her hand. So if someone likes that certain texture better, that might be something that they might be more motivated by or might be more efficient for them. Or if they're going to activate something with their head, you might want a softer texture. So it's just things to keep in mind. Another characteristic of switches that we'll look at a little bit today is how they're activated. So in this picture, she is activating that switch with her hand. You could probably also use a foot or an elbow, things like that, but she's physically touching the switch. There are other switches that you can activate just by getting close to them, or they're called proximity switches. Or you could use your mouth and things like that. So it's just kind of thinking about what is the most efficient and comfortable way that the individual who is going to be using the switch can reliably activate that switch. It's also helpful to think about how much input and force that the person can reliably and comfortably use without injury to themselves. So there are some switches where you just have to basically touch them and they activate. Or there are some switches where you have to use a little bit more pressure to activate. And then the last thing here is that switches do also give some feedback to let you know that they've been activated. And we'll look at this in our examples here in just a second. Some of them click or vibrate, have some lights or music and things like that. So as with all of assistive technology, this is something that can and should be very individualized, and thinking about the person who's going to be using the switch and what characteristics would be helpful for them in the switch that they're using. All right. So as Terry mentioned, we're going to start our demos now. And so for the next 2 slides, I'm going to switch to the doc cam, but I'm going to demo all of the pictures that are on the screen here. And also, if you're interested in more information, as she mentioned, on the supplemental handout, there's a link to all of the switches as well as the price as well. So I'm going to switch over to my doc cam here. All right. So today, what I'm going to use to demonstrate the switches for you is this cat switch adapted toy. He has a switch port coming out of his bottom there. But just know that these switches can be used to activate any of those things that we talked about. So you could use the same switches that we're going to look at for computers or tablets or communication devices. Just for the sake of time, we're just going to show you all of them here with this switch adapted toy. So the first switch that we're going to look at today is this jelly bean switch. And this is an example of a plate switch. And this switch is kind of a pretty common switch, so that lots of people know about them and use them. But it's just a simple plate on a base here that you could use to mount it if you need to. But what you do is take the switch port from the toy and plug the switch in here. And then I'm going to activate it. And my toy goes. And it's a little hard to hear, but when you activate this switch, there is that click. So I know that I've done enough pressure there to activate it. And so this switch can be helpful if you have someone who wants to use touch. You could use your hand, your foot, your elbow, things like that. This type kind of circular switch is available in smaller circles as well as bigger circles. So that is another variety to think about. This particular switch, the jelly bean, does come with different color tops. So this yellow part would switch, you can twist off, and it comes with a red, a blue, and a green top as well. So that if you as an individual can see a different color better, or you have a favorite color, you could do that. Or if you're using more than one of these switches, it can be helpful to know which color activates which item. So that is something to keep in mind as well. All right, so unplug that switch there. The next switch that I'm going to show you is called the Pal Pad. And it looks like this. And so the Pal Pad comes in 3 different sizes, and this is the middle size. So there is a size bigger than this and smaller than this. But what Pal Pads are is they are, if I turn this way, they're flat switches. And so if you look at it compared to the jelly bean, I don't have to, there's no kind of, I don't have to raise my hand to get to it as I do maybe in the jelly bean. So that might be a difference. You're looking at it and how you're able to access it. I'm going to plug this in here to my cat. And the other thing that's kind of unique about the Pal Pad is it tends to take a little less pressure to activate than maybe say a jelly bean or some other switches, so that I can tap it with my finger here and he activated. So it's a little more sensitive than some of the other switches. And again, I don't have to go very far to get to it height-wise. And so that is the Pal Pad. It's a flat membrane switch. And again, they come in different sizes as well as different colors. You can't change the color of the one you have, but you can, when you order them, you can choose from several different colors. So that's the Pal Pad. All right, the next 2 switches are examples of kind of the different activation methods that I talked about earlier. So the first one is the honeybee. And this is an example of a proximity switch. So I'm going to talk about it and then I'll turn it on so we can see. So it's a little hard to see here. Maybe if I can zoom in here. No, that's not going to work here. I'll hold it. There we go. So it has the T, the 1, the 3, and the 6 here. So if I turn this on here, which is on the side here, there we go. I can use these arrows to set. So let's see so on T, what that means is that I have to touch the switch in order for it to activate. And then if I go up to 1, oh, come on. Oh, let's see if the good old turn off and then turn it back on trick will work, because it stopped working. There we go. There we go. So now as I go up from 1 inch to 3 inch, that is how far I need to be from the switch in order for it to activate. So let's see if I can do this and then we'll connect it to the toy to show you. So if I hold it this way, and it's on 3 inches now, so that means I need to be 3 inches from it in order for it to activate. See if you heard that there, it went off. So I didn't have to touch the switch, I just had to get close to it. So now I'm gonna connect it to the toy here so you can see better what I mean by how it activates at proximity. So now it's connected to my toy and I just have to get close to it and it activates. So that can be helpful for an individual who might not be able to extend their arm very far, or might not have the accuracy. They just have to get close to something for it to activate. So that is a proximity switch. And again, this is the honeybee. Oh, and as you can hear, it has that beep, so you know that it has activated too. And turn it off so it will stop beeping here. All right. And another example of a proximity switch are the little and the big candy corn switch. So both of those switches are on your handout. But what I'm going to show to you is the big candy corn. And the main difference between the big and the little candy corn is as it sounds. This is the big candy corn. It's about the size of my palm here. The little candy corn is maybe about a third of this size. So that's the main difference. But this is also a proximity switch, so that if I turn it on here on the back, now that if I get close to this switch, there, you can see the lights there, it activates. The main difference between this proximity switch and the honeybee is that you can't change how far away you need to be from it. So there's just one distance for it. But if I plug it into my cat here again, I can activate him. See if I can do it this way, if that'll show you, just by getting close. So with this one, you do have to get pretty close, but you don't have to touch it to activate it. So this is the big candy corn proximity switch. And again, there's also a little version as well. Oh, turn them off there. All right. So the next example of a switch is a pillow switch. And a pillow switch is kind of what it sounds like. It's a softer switch. So it has a fabric cover and then kind of a styrofoam type inside. And this can be helpful if you're an individual who is maybe going to use their head or another body part to activate the switch, where kind of repeatedly having to hit like the jelly bean switch and the hard plastic might over time become might not be something that you like, or you might injure yourself. A pillow switch can be a great kind of switch to use. And so it is kind of the same size as that jelly bean, but it's much softer. But again, it's the same idea. We plug it in. And I do have to then just touch it and it activates. And I don't know if you can hear that, but there is that little click as well, which to know that I've activated it, which is helpful, especially if you're using your head or another body part, so because you might not be able to see the switch. So that can help you know that it's working and you've activated it. All right, I'll show you one last switch here. So the next switch that we have, get it under here for you, is called the Sensi Ball switch. And this is an example of a switch that has a different texture that we were talking about earlier. So a lot of switches are some kind of that more hard plastic type, or the pillow switch has the cloth feel, but this one kind of adds that sensory texture to it. So if you're an individual who is sensory seeking and you really like different textures and that's helpful for you, this might be an option. The other thing that's nice about this switch is it does have a pretty substantial base, so that it does raise the switch up too, so that it can make it easier to get to and you don't have to reach as far to get to it. So I'm going to plug this one in and show you how it works here. All right, so this switch, all I have to do is touch the ball and the cat should move here. Oh, and of course, that is one thing to know about switches. For some reason, some switches will not activate certain things, and I've never found a rhyme or reason to it, but of course we have our example here. So ideally what happens is that you just have to, oh, there he goes, see? You just have to move the ball a little bit and it will activate. So I can use any part of my body. I don't have to have my whole hand on there. I can just push the ball a little bit and he activates. So he didn't want to do it at first, but then he decided to. All right, so this is the Sensi ball switch. And it's a great example of that kind of sensory part that you can add to switches. All right, so I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint here. There we go. All right, and so the last example of a switch that I wanted to mention is the sip and puff switch. And so the sip and puff switch is a switch where you use your mouth to activate it. So it's a pneumatic switch and you use your breath either to sip air in or puff air out to activate it. So if you're someone or you're working with a student or an employee who has trouble activating things with their hands or even any part of their body, that might be an option, is to use your mouth and your breath to activate switches just like the other ones activate. All right. So when we think about switches, some devices like my cat toy and dedicated communication devices have those switch ports built in. They're switch ready. I can just plug a switch in and I'm ready to go. However, a lot of devices are not quote unquote switch ready. And so we have to use another tool in order to make them be able to be accessed with that switch. And that tool that we use to kind of put those two devices together is called an interface. And so with an interface, you can interact and access most toys that are not switch adapted, computers, tablets, electrical appliances, phones, things like that. So interfaces are something that you usually, not always, pair with a switch. So we're going to look at some examples here. All right, so I'm going to go back to my dot cam. All right, so the first switch interface that we're going to look at is called the Bluetooth switch. And just like it sounds, it uses Bluetooth to work. So I press the pair button on the side of the switch here, and then I would go into the Bluetooth menu on my computer, or my phone, or my tablet that I want to use it with, and then press pair so that they can talk to each other. And then I can either use the switches on here to activate whatever I've connected the Bluetooth to, or you can plug other, oh, that's a little hard to see. There we go. You can plug other switches into there so that if you prefer to use a jelly bean or a pillow switch, you could plug those into there and it would act as these orange and white switches, and it would help you control your computer or your phone or a tablet, things like that. So this can be a way that those switches that you're using can talk to that device that you want to control. So this is the Bluetooth, and it works using Bluetooth. However, there are wired options because sometimes people like to have that wired option so that they don't have to rely on Bluetooth. So the first wired option I want to show you is called the Hitch. So it has a USB cord, so you can plug it into a USB port. Then, let's see, that's not going to focus, is it? Oh, how it works is that there are 5 switch ports here on the bottom. So again, you can choose which switches you want to use with it. But then you select a row. Oh, that's a little better there. that you want those switches to act at. So the top row, you can use it to control the mouse. The next one will help you do some left clicks and right clicks and double clicks and so on. But what this will do is this will send whatever switches you assign by plugging them in down here. It will send that information to the computer and tell it that's what you want to do. So this one is an option that if you want to plug it in to your computer, you would be able to use it that way. All right, and then these next options are helpful for if you want to use switches with a tablet or a phone. So this is the Hook Plus, and this option is you're able to use this with Apple devices only because the cord that's built into it is that Lightning connector cord that would go into an Apple device. But what you would do is this one, you would plug directly into that tablet or phone, and then you would plug your switches into the holes here on the sides. And then that would allow you to control the tablet or the phone using a switch. Another option for tablets and phones is the Tapio. And this one, you can buy it in a couple different configurations. This one has an adapter that has a Lightning connector on it, so you could use it with Apple, but you can also unplug that adapter and use an adapter for an Android phone or tablet, or as you can see, it's just a USB. So you could use it that way and plug it in. And then this one on the end has the switch port for your switch. And so you could plug in a switch here and control your device using that switch. All right, I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint here. And then another interface that I wanted to mention is the PowerLink 4. And this is an interface that would allow you to control electrical appliances with your switch. So what you do is you plug your switches into the side of the PowerLink here, and then you would plug whatever appliance you wanted to control into the outlets here, whether it be a light, stand mixer, blender, things like that. And then once it's set up, you can hit your switch and it will activate whatever you have plugged into the PowerLink. So that can be a way to access some of those electrical appliances that might be more difficult for someone to use with their hands and activate that way. And then I also wanted to mention that there are eye gaze and head tracking interfaces. And so these are interfaces that you don't need a switch to use, but that you can use other methods to activate. So eye gaze is where you use your eyes, the motion of your eyes and where you look to activate things. And so, for example, this is the PCI here on the screen. This can be plugged into a laptop, this works with Windows, I should say, laptop or tablet. And then you position it so that these cameras here on the device can see your eyes, and there are infrared cameras that then detect the motion of your eyes. And then you look at the screen and dwell for a certain amount of time on the item you want to select. And then once it's been that amount of time, it will select that item for you. So it can be a way to access items without having to use a switch, without having to use your hands, your arms, things like that. And then there are also options for head tracking, which sounds similar to eye gaze, and it is, but it's just slightly different. So head tracking is tracking the movement of your head, whereas eye gaze is just looking at your eyes. So with head tracking, I can move my head to move a mouse around the screen, and then again, dwell in a certain place and do a certain action, whether it be raising my eyebrows, smiling, opening my mouth to tell the device that I want to activate something. And so there are kind of head mouses that you can use, but on certain iPhones and iPads, that is also built into the device. You do have to have one of the newer iPhones or iPad Pros. You have to have that Face ID camera in order for it to work. But there are options for head tracking, so then you wouldn't need a switch at all to interact with a device.
Hey, Elizabeth, can I jump in real quick? We just
Go
had
for
a
it.
question about the adapters for the Tapio. Are they
Yes.
just standard adapters? So if somebody is looking for one for a USB-C, could they buy just a standard adapter from USB to USB-C?
Yes, I believe you could. And the Tapio itself, like if you were to go to the link that's on the handout, they sell, like we bought the two things together from the company, but you can always, use another adapter if you're using something that has that USB-C. I'm not 100% if the company sells them, like that, who makes this, but you could always just get one from Apple or somewhere too.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so we've talked about switches and interfaces and things like that, and they can be great tools, but we have to be able to access them. So we have to think about how can we mount these in a way, either to a table or to a bed or a wheelchair or to our desk at school or work, so that we can access the things that are going to help us access things. So there are mounts that can be used for switches, communication devices, computers, phones, and tablets. And so there are, again, lots of different options. The first one that we want to talk about is pictured here on this screen. So Mountain Mover is a mount that is very customizable. You can work with the company and you can choose different, what you want to mount, how you want it to move, and things like that. But we're going to look at a quick video here to see kind of how her mount works. So Linnea has her computer mounted, as well as her keyboard and her mouse down below. But what is unique about this mount is that the things are easily movable. So I wanted to show you that video so you can see it. So I'm just gonna go over here. All right, so this is Linnea, and she is using a mount from Mountain Mover, and she's kind of customized based on what she wanted to mount. So I'm gonna go full screen here, and she's gonna demonstrate her mount for us. So she can bring her keyboard in, and then her computer moves over to the top so she can access those things that she needs to use. And in this case, she's using them with her wheelchair. And so with the Mountain Mover, you can do that, but you can mount things to other places as well. All right, so go back to the PowerPoint here. All right, so that is one example of a mount, but there are others. So let's go forward here. So this hover mount is has an elbow joint. So you can bend things and move things where you want to at this joint here, but then you can use this hover mount to mount switches, tablets, things like that. And then it has a clamp here that you can clamp onto a table, a desk, a wheelchair, things like that. The gooseneck mounting system is a similar idea. It has a similar clamp here at the bottom. And then with the mounting plate, you can mount a switch or a tablet, depending on what mounting plate you use. But the difference is that the arm is a gooseneck arm. So it doesn't just have that one kind of place of movement. You can kind of twist it a little bit more. So you can kind of get it right where you want to a little bit more. Another similar example is called modular hose, and that is what is used in this tablet holder and with spring clamp. And the modular hose is a little different than the gooseneck in that you can make it however long you want and add the pieces how you want. So you can add pieces of this modular hose to make things longer or shorter. You can use different clamps, but then it's also still very flexible so that you can turn things so that they curve like this here, and get them exactly in the right position so that you're not, you don't have to interact with things in ways that might be inefficient or might over time cause you some injury from not being in the right position and things like that. So again, I can mount tablets, switches. I believe they also have a tray at the top so that you could put a book on there and read your book that way and things like that. And then this Teclaphone mount also uses that modular hose idea. So if you were mounting it to your wheelchair, you could get it to just the right length, but then you can mount your phone here on the top, and then your phone is in a position where you can access it. All right. So quickly talk about adaptive mice here. And so if someone might have difficulty controlling a standard mouse to get it to go where they want it to go, click what they want to click, or even if they just find that using a standard mouse, they don't like the ergonomics of it. Terry's going to show us in just a moment. She uses kind of one of these different non-standard mice, but there are lots of different options from roller balls, track balls, all the way to touch pads and bar mice. And so I'm going to show you a few examples. Let's see here. All right. So the first example here is the big track. And so this mouse is different in that it has a wider, sturdier base, so it can be a little bit more stable if that's something that's needed. And it has a bigger trackball here that I can activate with my hand, my foot, really anything that I can use. And then it has bigger buttons for left and right click as well. So that if I might not have the fine motor control to use that smaller mouse, this might be something that I might be more efficient with. All right. And then the next mouse here, this is the enabler joystick. And this also has that wide base and a joystick that acts as how I move my mouse, and it doesn't take much to activate it. So I don't need much force there. But it also has buttons for left click, right click. It has its own button for double click. So if you find kind of pressing something twice in a row fast enough difficult, that can be an option. But it's something that you can use as a mouse as well. All right. And then the marble mouse and the mini trackball both kind of use a trackball in place of a mouse. So here I can kind of do everything in one spot. I can just use my roller ball. I have my buttons here on the side, and it's a little more ergonomic. So I can keep everything in one spot, and I don't have to move things around as much. And then the mini trackball is also more ergonomic mouse. This is something that you hold in your hand. And so I use my thumb on the roller ball, and then it has buttons here, but it also, let's see if I can get it to show up here. Maybe a little bit. It has a button right here that is your left click. So then you don't even have to use anything on the table. You can just use it, right up in your hand. All right, one more mouse, and then Terry's going to show us some keyboards. This is the roller mouse, and this is even a little big for my document camera here. But this mouse is intended to go right in front of your keyboard. So your keyboard would be right here. And then this little bar here moves. So this controls your mouse. So if I go side to side, my mouse would move side to side. And if I go forward and backward, it would move up and down. It also has a trackball here. But then down here near the wrist rest, so this is padded here, I have some buttons for copying and pasting. So if that might make that easier, so I don't have to use some clicking as much of that. And then this is my left click, my right click, and my double click here. So in this case, as I'm using it, I don't then have to go off to the side to get to my mouse. It keeps everything kind of in one area and reduces the motion that I have to use a little bit. All right, so now Terry's going to show us some keyboards.
All right, before I dive into keyboards, I'm actually just going to show you guys the mouse
yes.
that Elizabeth mentioned. So this is called a vertical mouse. It's by a company called Evolent. And the reason that I started using this mouse is because I was just using the traditional one that came with my computer. And I was getting a lot of hand pain just from holding the mouse in the traditional format. So I thought I would give this one a try. And what I like about it is that it just puts your hand in a really natural posture. So, you know, my mouse clicks are here on the side. I've got a little scrolly ball here. And then you just move it on the table. So, and there's no like rolly ball on the mouse, it's optical. So, you know, it knows where you are because of that little optical laser. But I find it to be a lot more comfortable than a traditional mouse. And I don't get the same sort of hand fatigue when I'm on my computer for long periods of time. So again, it's called the Evolent vertical mouse, and it comes in a right or left hand orientation. I'm a righty, so this is a right-handed one, but they make left-handed ones as well. And this one is a wired mouse. They might make it in a Bluetooth version, but I can't say that for certain. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen quickly, because I know we are starting to get low on time here, but we want to make sure that you guys get to see some of these cool keyboards as well. So there's so many different types of alternative keyboards, and we'll look at a few examples of those today. Ones with larger print, ones that have higher contrast for the letters, keyboards that are much smaller, things that are more ergonomic, and then there's also one-handed keyboards. And what you see on the screen there on this slide is, you know, just a traditional keyboard, but there is an acrylic key guard that is laying over the top, and you just attach it usually with a couple pieces of Velcro to your keyboard. And what can be really helpful about a key guard is that if you are somebody who, when you type, your hands rest heavily on a keyboard, you get a lot of mishits, but a keyboard allows your hands to rest on the keyboard, and then you don't have those mishits. It also helps with finger isolation for hitting those individual keys. So really the whole goal of a key guard is just to help with those mishits. So we're going to go in and we're going to look at a few of these keyboards today. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share here for a moment. Okay. Okay. So the thing that I will show you first is the large print keyboard. And I have a whole bunch of keyboards surrounding me, so hopefully you can see this okay. And Molly, I'm not sure how that's showing up. You might need to spotlight me to make the screen bigger, because I think it's just showing Elizabeth's.
Okay.
Or maybe Elizabeth, if you mute yours, it might work as well. But like I said, so this is the keys, or the keys you see. There we go, perfect. So this looks just like a regular keyboard. You know, it doesn't have larger keys or smaller keys. It just has really bold keys. So this is really helpful for an individual who just needs to be able to see the letters on the key better. Somebody with low vision might benefit from something like this. It's about $35 for a wired version. They also make a wireless for about $59. You can get the black with the bold keys like this, or they also make a yellow key with a black letter as well. Like I said, sometimes you just need keys that you can see more boldly. This is also great for lower light situations because the letters are more visible. So that is the keys you see. The next one I'll show you is called the one that I have is called the Big Keys, Big Keys LX. They don't really make that one anymore as far as I know, but there is a newer version called the Vision Board. I'm not sure if it's by the same manufacturer, but it looks really similar. So this one, as you can see, it just has much larger keys. So these are 1-inch keys. So when you touch it, you know, it works the same way. You get the same kind of feedback. but it just has much larger keys. And this particular one, we have a key guard on as well. So, this can be really helpful for somebody who just, they have a harder time with those smaller keystrokes with their fingers. If those bigger movements are easier for them, this can be really helpful. There's also some arrow keys on here, so you can control those different functions on your computer. So kind of going with the theme of larger keyboards, the last larger keyboard that I'm going to show you today is called the Kinderboard. This is similar to the bigger keyboards that you see in that it has the 1-inch keys. But what's a little bit different about this keyboard is that you see some color coding. So you've got green for your consonants, your vowels are purple, your numbers are red, and then some of your more function keys and symbols are yellow. So something like that can be helpful. Sometimes for a younger student who's maybe just learning to type, and needs help finding their letters a little bit better, or if it's just helpful for really anybody to be able to see things grouped by color coded. This is also available in either a wired or non-wired version. The non-wired version is called the Big Blue because it connects via Bluetooth as well, which can also be connected to a tablet or an iPhone or an iPad, something along those lines. The other one I'll show you, this is a full-sized keyboard, but what's really unique about this is it is called the half QWERTY 508 keyboard. So this just looks like a regular keyboard, but what you'll notice is that each of those keys also has another letter assigned to it. And what's unique about that and what some people find really useful is that you can switch between two-handed typing to one-handed typing. So they make one-handed keyboards. So you might say, well, why don't you just get a one-handed keyboard if you want to do one-handed typing? Well, not everybody consistently needs a one-handed keyboard, those much smaller versions. Sometimes they can type great with two hands. For something like this, you just have to switch between the one-handed and the two-handed mode. And then to engage those letters that are kind of the sub letters on those, you just have to hit the space bar. So there's a little bit of a learning curve with typing with a keyboard like this, but it would be beneficial for somebody who needs to kind of move seamlessly between two-handed and one-handed typing and doesn't want to have to set up a different keyboard depending on what their needs are for the day. This keyboard is a bit more expensive than a lot of other keyboards are. This one, I think it runs almost, I think it's about, oh goodness, I lost my little Post-it for this guy, $5.95. So it is not a cheap keyboard, but there's a lot of functionality built into that. The other end of that spectrum are smaller keyboards, things that are much more portable, compact. If you have a harder time with those big movements or those bigger reaches with your fingers, there are much smaller versions as well. Like there's this one right here, which is called the folding universal keyboard, which is very small. And then I open it up and I've got a full keyboard here. And what's kind of unique about this is it has, has a little kickstand, and then I can put my phone, I can prop it right in there and it connects via Bluetooth. So this may be beneficial for somebody who maybe does a lot of work on a tablet or their phone, but has a hard time typing on an on-screen keyboard. So something like this might be helpful. And then if they don't need it to be foldable and portable, there's just this guy here, which, is, just a smaller, it's called the Ultra Mini keyboard. So it's a full keyboard again, but it's just a much smaller version. So you have much smaller movements to get to the keys. So different options there. And then kind of the wild card one, this is a very different one. This is called the Orbi Touch. So this works both as a keyboard and a mouse. So you just have to switch between keyboard and mouse mode, which you can see over here. Oh, sorry guys, keyboard and mouse mode. But what's really unique and different about this is that instead of having to have any type of finger movements, you just need to be able to move these domes. And over on I'm backwards here. Over on the side, the letters are an A to Z orientation, and they're color coded. So you have to move, the color here and match it up with the letter on the side. So again, there's a bit of a learning curve here, but there are certainly individuals who benefit from this. The company kind of markets it as a device that would be helpful for somebody who maybe has prosthesis and can't make those finger movements when they type. So something like that might be helpful and beneficial. So I went through my keyboard super fast, but I just wanted to make sure you saw them. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint and just kind of take you through those last few slides today. Okay. So we want to thank you for taking your lunch to join us today. We're glad that you took some time to spend an hour with us to learn about these different access tools. If you are ever interested in getting in contact with us, if you have more questions, you can always email us or you can call and leave a voicemail and we'll get back to you. We do have another access workshop coming up in July. This one is something that goes a little bit beyond, what Elizabeth and I talked about today. We're doing more of a general overview. This is going a little bit beyond those kind of more traditional access options. And I also wanted to bring to your attention something that we have going on called Excite Camp, which is going to be held July 22nd through August 5th. This is a virtual camp that we are holding for middle school girls with disabilities. It's something that we hold every year. It's typically in person because of COVID. Last year and this year, we are holding it virtually. We do still have some spots available, so we just wanted to make sure that we are getting the word out to everybody that if you are interested, please make sure that you share this information with individuals who might benefit from attending. It's a lot of fun. You get to learn about all sorts of cool STEM topics, learn from people that are in the industry. We have all sorts of great guest speakers, and it's just a whole ton of fun. Elizabeth, would you add anything else about Excite Camp?
I think that's about it, but it's a fun time and we're looking forward to it.
And then the last thing today is that we will just ask that you complete a workshop evaluation. So Molly will drop the link to that in the chat. There's also a bit.ly link on the screen here or a QR code. You can do it any way that works for you. But like I said in the very beginning, this is how you get your certificate of attendance. You need to complete the whole workshop evaluation. Once you get to the bottom of it and you click to submit it, a thank you message will come up on the screen and the link to your certificate will be there. So you'll need to click on that link to bring it up on your screen and then either save or print. All right, so we want to again thank you for joining us today. And please reach out if you have additional questions and keep watching our workshop page for more workshops in the future. Molly, were there any other questions that we didn't get to today? I know lots of people will be signing off, but if anybody has any additional questions, we can hang out for just a minute or two to answer any additional questions.
Yeah, I think we're all caught up so far. So we'll wait a second and see if any additional questions do come in. There's a question about the link to the certificate. So after you complete your evaluation, which is linked in the chat or on the slide that's up right now, you will get a link to the certificate.
All right. Well, if there are no additional questions, we will go ahead and end this today. But again, please feel free to reach out to any of us if you have those questions, and we'd be happy to answer them for you. And we hope to see you at future